was wondering if we could introduce ourselves to people online, just to know who's available for the session and the country you're based in. Sorry, can you hear me? I don't know if I'm having problems with audio. I just want to can everyone just tell me if they can hear me? I think that's a good thing. Am I clear? Hello?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, your voice is very feeble, but yes, I can manage.
Oh, sorry. So it's not very clear.
Not very clear, yeah.
Wow, sorry. Wow. Okay. So what country are you based in? That's Ajay, right?
Yeah, myself is Ajay.
Okay. And what country are you based in?
Sorry?
What country are you based in? What country are you calling in from?
Not getting you.
Sorry, what country?
Oh, I am in Singapore. Currently, I am in Singapore, based in Singapore.
All right, that's good to know. So welcome to the module, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Hopefully, the audio becomes clearer. I'm trying to see if there's anything I can do to make it clearer. Hopefully, the audio gets clearer.
Okay.
So let's start.
Sure.
So very quickly, let's look at the this is the strategic leadership module. The level 7 module, so equivalent to masters, and it has 4 learning outcomes. So we'll be having 4 sessions. One is to understand the principles, concepts, differences, and approaches to contemporary leadership. So that's what we'll be covering today. So basically, different theories of leadership.
Okay.
We'll contrast that a little bit with leadership and management. What's the role of strategic leadership and strategic management? Right. How leadership can be.
Okay.
Yeah, how leadership can influence teams and individuals and organizations, and with big focus to be on teams and teamwork and team dynamics, and also formal and informal. The third session will look more closely at leadership and performance, how leadership can influence performance in organizations and among individuals, and we'll look at a lot of performance management and things like that. And then the fourth session, understand ethical decision making and organizational values. So we'll be looking at leadership, ethics, corporate social responsibility, things like that. So that's basically the outline for the course. I just noticed that I'm going to use the slides I'm going to use now are different from the ones on your Moodle. So after this section, I'm going to upload these ones to Moodle. The ones on Moodle are not good enough.
So today we will cover only one or all 4.
We are going to cover for today. We are going to cover this one, leadership.
Leadership. Okay. All right. Understand principal concept.
Yes, that's what we are going to cover. And the slides I'm using are different from the ones on Moodle. So after the session, sometime today, I will upload the ones I'm using to Moodle.
Yes. Then after the session, I will able to see from the course material there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the ones that are Moodle now are not these ones, but these ones I'm using I've added stuff, so it's much better, and then I will upload to Moodle. So let's start. So leadership. Last time somebody tried to count, there are over 250 definitions of leadership, so it's very difficult to define. But the common, and people don't disagree on all the aspects of the common definition of leadership, so there's disagreement. But the common theme around leadership is influence, right? Leadership is the ability to influence and persuade people to carry out a set of tasks to achieve an objective, right?
Yeah.
So that's the main idea of leadership. Of course, that influence will improve performance, improve productivity, and so on, right? Providing synergy and benefits to the organization. So the whole idea that leadership can make 2 plus 2 to become 5 instead of 4, adding that extra spice, that extra synergy, that extra dynamic to make things happen and influence people to go the extra mile and so on. Management is slightly different, but it's related to leadership. So management is more about implementing a set of tasks in carrying out the objectives, so planning, organizing, controlling, budgeting, that kind of thing. So you may find your role involves both leadership and management sometimes, right? Sometimes some people say, oh, they are two different things. Others say, oh, they can be combined. But basically, the leader sets the vision and motivates and inspires people and influences them towards the vision, while the manager implements and gets things done efficiently and effectively. So that's basically the idea.
Yeah, I believe this leadership is leader. People should also understand you a leader. They should follow you. So you have to really influence them so that they can follow. They feel yes, you can lead them.
Yes, yes. And there are different styles of doing that, different ways of influencing. Sometimes you have to be very forceful, sometimes more democratic, sometimes more laid back and empowering people. So you need to look at the different leadership styles, which is what we are looking at today.
Yeah.
So obviously we have a lot of information on the slides. We don't read every slide, and even the slides we read, we don't read every single word. More for you when you're preparing to write your assignment so that you have some background knowledge, right? So what I do is I just look at the key points and try to explain the key points and have that discussion. Yeah.
Sure.
So one of the when we start talking about leadership theory, the first set of questions that we are asked, the first debate was, are leaders born or are leaders made?
Yeah. I think leader is made, not born, not all the time correct.
Okay, why?
Because you see, I feel you cannot enforce anybody to just follow you, to means they treat you as your leader, but your actions. I think your actions and then your influence. It is much more than people will start following you.
Very good, very good. So those of the people who say leaders are born say there are some special types of people that are leaders. You're either a leader or you're not leader. You either have that innate trait or quality, and such people, no matter what situation they will be, they will come out as a leader. They will emerge as a leader. Whereas people who argue that leaders are made say, look, there are those sets of actions that leaders do, but you can train people to do them, right? So that was the first set of arguments around leadership, and that led to a set of theories, like we talk like the great man theory. I'm just annotate that. Things like this great man theory and straight theory and so on, right? Then we move more into modern theories like what we call behaviorist theories. The idea that leadership should adapt to the situation, right?
Yes.
And you should be able to flex your leadership style to different situations, right? And those are more modern types of theories. So we'll be looking at this in a bit more detail and introducing into some of these ideas and theories. So we've talked about leadership and management being related, but some people will argue different. Some common things around them, we need to think about your communication. You need to have good communication skills and so on and so forth. For leaders, more importantly, we are looking at innovation and creativity, not so much for managers. For managers, we are looking more for efficiency to implement what already exists, right? And things like that. Um, so we've talked about
I
whether
think,
leaders are born or made. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
yeah, I was telling you on your previous slide,
Yeah.
whatever is written, all, I think it is by experience or by this thing. It is not by born. So it is something that, yes, person has to create
Yes.
creative thinking, and means he should be calm under pressure, and
Yeah.
he means it is many qualities which will develop over a period.
Yes. Yes. And that's the argument for people who say leadership is made. It takes time. You evolve. You develop. You can be trained. You can go
Yes,
on courses and so on to develop it.
correct,
But
correct.
you also realize that those who argue that leaders are born will tell you that there are some people that, even though they don't get that training, still exhibit
Uh,
these qualities.
yes, yes. This is characteristic also. If a person means born, if we talk about born leader, so
Yeah,
maybe they may be knowing lesser, but they know that they have ability to control and to create their followers.
yeah, very good, very good. That's good. Um, and then in terms of management, we start talking about focusing on tasks rather than on the vision, focusing
Uh,
on discipline rather than so much motivation and inspiration. So those are some of the
mm,
differences we start seeing in terms of management. So planning, organizing, leading, controlling are all related to each other, and then the aspects of the way managers do it is quite different. So they focus more on the organizing and controlling aspects and some planning.
mm.
So that leads us nicely into um, next slide. This one on leadership. Um, so we've talked a lot about this summarizes a lot of the things we've already talked about: leadership for inspiration and persuasion and influence. This slide talks about management and starts introducing the idea of performance management. If you have leaders, inspire them to follow your objectives. You have managers, try to manage people doing tasks and so on. Resources, also they manage other resources, financial
Yeah,
resources.
correct, correct.
And then you now need to start thinking about how do you monitor performance, how do you improve performance of your personnel, of your human resources. So we
Mm,
start thinking about the idea of performance management, appraisals, coaching, which we will look at in the third section in more detail, but we'll just introduce the idea now. So some key things around leadership that are important: the idea of influence over other people as a basic definition, interpersonal skills, your
mm,
ability to relate with people is very important. Um,
mm.
you you need to have those interpersonal skills that enable you relate well with people rather than hiding behind your computer or behind your a television screen or so. You must be able to
Yeah,
inspire. Influence, we've already talked about that. Also, issues of power and authority come into play. Some people are appointed leadership by the nature of their position and authority. If you are
mm,
company, others out of their personal charisma or inspiration
mm.
get the role of leadership. It's not given to them. They are not appointed as a leader, but they just emerge as the leader. So different ways of influencing. Another important thing for leadership is goal setting, objective, vision.
Mm.
You need to have a direction that you are leading people towards. So those are um, key aspects of leadership we would like to emphasize.
Uh,
All right. So this slide now starts introducing the different leadership theories and leadership styles.
and tell me whether this theory is changing over a period, or it is same.
Both. So these theories are changing in the sense that while the great man used to be very popular about 100, 200 years ago, people thought that a leader was a great man who was born special. Mahatma
Oh.
Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, whoever you are,
Mm.
and our job was just to identify, the person who had this God-given ability, right? And it was usually a man, very little space for women to be leaders. But now we can see that we have moved now towards more transformational leadership and so on and so forth. So the ideas have moved on, but you can still see that some elements of the old ones still continue. And I will explain as we go. So some of the elements of them, they are not totally disregarded, because we still see some elements of them still continuing to today. So this is a very, very important slide. When you do your assignment, you will be expected to talk about these theories, and you will need to use these references. So this is why we put this slide there, to give you the references so that you know what to use for your assignment, right? Each time you are writing your assignment, if you are talking about great man theory, we need to see the reference by Carlyle. If it's situational theory by Lewis, we need to see those references. Don't just talk about a theory without telling us the researcher or the author who wrote about it, right? So that's the way that's important. All right, so let's look at these theories in a bit more detail. So we start with the great man theory. So about 200 years ago, people like Thomas Carlyle wrote and said, look, there's something called leadership, and it's about our identifying who has this special, innate, God-given ability. People, are born with it. You're either a leader, you're not a leader. Because right from primary school, without having trained anybody, we can see some children are already leading others. When they play sports, some already assume that leadership role, organizing the team and so on. Other children follow them, And so that was the idea that, look, those people, you don't need to train them. They will always be leaders. Any situation you put them in, they will be leaders, right? So the whole idea was to identify these special people who have that leadership ability. Very closely followed by the trait theory, which is very similar. Trait theory now says, okay, so these great men are leaders, but what are the things we need to look out for to identify them? We call those traits. So what are the traits? Decisiveness, personal impact, what's called charisma. All these are traits that a leader can have. Decision making, quick decision making, right? Some innovative ideas, innovation and creativity. So the leadership trait theory of leadership was more concerned with identifying which traits should be, which traits make up good leadership, and which traits are for bad leadership, and whose traits of leaders that followers don't have, that kind of thing. But the problem is, different people researched the trait theory and they could not agree on one common list or set of traits. Some people had a list of traits, others have a list of different traits. Now, while this again is another old theory, we've moved on, we still talk about those traits today, especially things like charisma, things like decisiveness, things like personal impact. We see them as important to leadership today. So we've not totally abandoned that theory. We still use it today. Just like the great man theory is not totally abandoned. We still acknowledge that there are some people that without training already exhibit these leadership skills. The training only makes them better. Then we moved more into the behaviorist theories. And people like Merton and McGregor started identifying the behaviors we need for leaders. And the difference between the behaviors and the traits is that the behaviors can be learned. Behaviors can be trained, right? Things like time management, things like communication skills, things like making powerful presentations.
Behavior can change according to circumstances, according to your surroundings. It may change many times.
Yes, and that's where we now start looking at situation and contingency theory, because the first people who brought out the behaviorist theory didn't really talk about change. They just said these are the behaviors that make up leadership. Let's identify what those behaviors are. Then the next step, the situational and contingency theory starts as saying, look, it can change, just like you correctly pointed out. Now, there's a difference between the two. The situational people say that every leader can change their behavior. So if they are working with this department, and this department means forceful leadership, they can give that strong style of leadership. 6 months later, you move them to another department and things are different in that department. That department needs more democratic, consultative style of leadership. And a good leader can change to give that leadership style or her leadership style. So that is situational leadership. They say a good leader should have the ability to flex their leadership style, to have different leadership styles for different situations. A very popular leadership style today, right? Even within a team, you can have a team of 5 people you are leading, and the leadership style for the 5 people will be different. When you are dealing with employee A, you lead them in this way. When you are leading employee B, you may lead them in a different way because they are different personalities. That is situational leadership style. But they had a disagreement because the people like Turnbull and Smith and Fiedler, who did the contingency theory style, said no. That when they did their research, they found that many leaders find it very difficult or are incapable of switching their leadership style. That rather, what you should do is to switch the leader. So, if your organization is facing a crisis and you need a leader who knows good crisis leadership, employ that CEO. That's the other one, right? When that person has stabilized the crisis and you need somebody else who can grow the organization, sack that CEO, bring a different leader with a different style. So for them to say that somebody who is a specialist in, for instance, crisis leadership cannot change their style. So you bring them when they fit that organization's point in time, and when that organization's situation changes, then you get a different person. So the difference between situational is they believe the leader can change their style to meet different situations. Whereas contingency believes leader has only one style, but you still need to change. Therefore, who you should change is the leader. That cannot change that style. So that is, and we still see both of them being used very well. If you follow football, for instance, you see that sometimes you bring this football manager as a leader in a team. They have this style. If the style is not working, you have to sack him because they find it very difficult to change their style.
But in a team, if too many leaders, then also problem.
Yes. So if you have too many leaders, then too many cooks.
Too many. Too many.
But we also these are the basic leadership style. There are some other ones that are not here, but if you read your book, you will see them. We also have what we call distributed leadership and team leadership theories. Those ones say yes, even though too many leaders may be a problem, and that's why we need power and authority and clear roles and responsibilities. But we also need to know that we have informal leaders and formal leaders. You may have a formal leader who is the head of department, but informally, some employees have that leadership and they bring it and help the department. Especially when the formal leader may be weak. So what they are saying is that distinction between followers and leaders is not as clearly formalized or clear-cut as people think it is. We have distributed leadership coming from the bottom up. So those are other leadership theories you can read in the textbooks and things on Moodle. Very interestingly, we come to transactional and transformational theories. So these theories compare 2 types of leaders. They say some leaders are transactional leaders, while others are transformational leaders. So the transactional leaders tend to focus more on management and leading by improving efficiency and delivering what already exists. They don't normally have a vision of a new team, and they don't normally inspire people. But they are very good in leading on what already exists. If you say this thing already exists, just go and deliver it. They can do that. Whereas
transactional leaders, what do you think? Transactional leaders will come within the department or within the company, or they may be new person to the company?
It can be either way. It can be either way. Because we find some new people can be transformational or transactional. It really depends. The transactional leaders tend to be um, sometimes you can start off as a transformational leader, but you are not given the room to do it. You are reprimanded, you are pushed back, and then you can change back to a transactional leader and say, okay, let me not bring any creativity or innovation because nobody's listening, nobody's giving me the room. So those are some of the problems with the transaction. So you may be an old person who's there and you are more transactional, not by choice, but by circumstance.
Yeah, because you see, if a new person coming, then his or her acceptability should be there within the department, within the people.
Yeah.
If a person coming from within the company, I think he will be more accepted than any new person coming.
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the situation of the organization. Sometimes, if you are coming with a lot of credibility, you've already made your name somewhere else. You are a star, and you are brought in to change the situation. People are already open to you because they know, oh, yeah, this fantastic leader that turned Apple around or turned Google around. They're now coming to Yahoo or coming to BMW. So there are different variables you need to weigh, but it's not all the time that the person has to fight that battle to get acceptance. But yes, it does happen a lot. So we have this idea of transactional and transformational leadership. The transformational leadership being more charismatic, more inspirational, right? So the remaining slides just give more
detailed information.
More information on these ones. That's why I say this is the most important slide, and I've gone through it. Everything else.
So currently, which theory we are following up? This because last theory which we are talking in this slide is still very old. So anything latest, or we are just means this was born 1978 and was means latest was 1990.
So we have newer theories of leadership, but like I said, these ones we don't throw them away, right? That's still important, especially if you look at organizations. This idea of transformational leadership still tends to be the most popular, the one by Bond, right?
Even today also.
Even today, still also. But in terms of some of the newer theories of leadership that are not here, but in your books, your textbooks, that are just coming out now. We have like I talked about, the idea of distributed leadership, the idea of team leadership, that leadership that happens at team level, different from leadership of an organization. We have ethical leadership, which we'll cover in lesson 4, where we talk about what is more important, not so much your technical ability as a leader, your integrity and character.
Correct. That is, every aspect matters. Yeah.
So we have some of this. Then we have more coaching styles of leadership also, which we may cover a bit in lesson 3, saying that a leader now needs to become more of a coach and a mentor, right? Using that kind of personal, informal influence rather than using a organizational directive.
Okay.
So those are the more modern theories of leadership, and you see some of these in your books.
Okay.
So we've discussed the trait leadership, we've discussed contingency and situational. One of the ones we want to focus on now is style, because that one, these behavioral styles, we didn't really, and situational, we didn't really cover it as in-depth. So that's the last thing I want to really cover on. Like I said, performance management and things we'll look at in lesson 3. This is just to highlight that leadership also involves management and motivation. So it's always bear in mind that there are different theories of motivation, and how you as a leader view your employees is very important. So we are going to zoom in now on this idea of theory X and theory Y. The mindset you have as a leader, is very important. If you come in with the idea that your employees are lazy, they don't want to work, they want to get away with anything they can get away with, therefore your leadership will be all about controlling them, disciplining them, punishing them. You don't trust them. It's not a trust-based leadership. For that theory X, right? Because your mindset already that people are unambitious, lazy, untrustworthy, right? You have a theory X style of approach.
So that is the work of management.
Sorry?
Discipline, that is a work of management, not
Yes,
the leader.
yes, this is the work of manager, but remember it's linked to motivation, and leaders also motivate. So that's why we say this is leadership, this is management, but there's a link, right?
Yeah, but leader is something you always, you see, always motivate the team. Leader should be like
Yes.
that.
Yes. A leader should inspire and motivate. Yes, that's what we are saying.
Inspire, motivate, yes.
So a theory-wise style of management, which also links to your approach to motivation, is where you use a trust-based style, right, to motivate them. You believe that employees are hardworking, they just need the tools and resources and support to give their best.
Yeah.
So when it comes to leadership, you tend to trust and empower your followers. So it's related to leadership. So those are some points just to keep at the back of your mind in
Okay.
terms of theory X and theory Y.
Mm.
Some of the more you are asking for, some of the more recent theories of leadership, some of them are here. We've talked about transformational and transactional leadership. We'll talk a bit more
Yeah.
about situational leadership.
Yeah.
Laissez-faire leadership is interesting. This one is a lazy style of leadership, some people call it. But it's basically saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If there's no problem, don't try to fix
Correct. Correct.
it.
Yeah.
So
I
it's not
think.
every time that because they make you a leader, you want to make your mark, you want people to know you have made a change, and then you start putting change in place. So you see that a lot of CEOs come in a company, nothing's really wrong with the company, but they want to leave a legacy that people can say, this is what I did, put it on their CV before they move on to the next job. So they do a lot
Mm.
of interference and change, and sometimes that disrupts the company. So that's what we are saying is sometimes a more laissez-faire approach maybe better.
Mm.
However, you have to be careful. If you hands off too much, then you don't know what's
Mm.
going on and you're not actually leading.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Okay.
So it can be also a bad leadership style if you do laissez-faire too much. So that's the
Yeah.
argument there. And then others, action-centered leadership talks about what you actually do when you lead. Let me actually, that's a good one. Let me show you that model very quickly. Others, action-centered leadership has 3 circles. Let me cover that now. Uh, yeah, so this is the added theory of leadership.
Okay.
What it's saying here is you need to, as a leader, you need to focus on 3 things: the task,
Mm. Mm.
the individual needs, and the group needs. The task. So, what
Yeah.
objective are you doing, and what activities do you need to get to objectives? You need to ensure that
Mm.
you are on track. So, there's some project management, some allocation of resources, some budgeting, some monitoring of performance involved in leadership. If not, you are not a good leader. You need to focus on what the group needs. So as a
Mm.
group or as a team you are leading or department you are leading, what do they need? You need to build their relationships with each other, team dynamics,
Mm.
so people know how to, well to work with each other, motivation, discipline, communication, ensure there are good communication channels across the whole team. But you also need to focus on the individual. So we found that
Mm.
previous theories of leadership forgot the individual. They were only telling the leader what to do to the whole organization or the whole group.
Mm.
But
Mm.
after doing something to the whole department or organization or team, you still need to select individuals one by one and spend some time with them, coaching them, supporting them, counseling them, developing them, motivating them. Right?
Mm.
So, what ATHE is saying is that leadership is in 3 circles: task.
Yeah, I think these are the three main aspects. If these three can be done, means all are happy and things will progress.
Yes. Yes. So that's we just covered ATHE's action center leadership, and then this is the situational leadership, behavioral styles of leadership. I said I wanted to
Mm.
talk a bit more about before we
Mm.
close. So here, what they're arguing here is that you have followers with different levels of readiness at the bottom, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
depending on the people you have in your team that you are leading, some of them are highly competent, some moderate competent, some no competent, some are confident, some are not confident, some know learn very fast, some learn very slow. So you have different
Exactly. Mm.
followers, right? Where you have the
Mm.
type we call R1, right, low level of readiness, then your
Mm.
leadership style should be instructing. You have to give very clear and detailed instructions,
Mm.
right? Which is less on interpersonal relationships and motivation and more focused on task-based instruction.
Mm.
Where you have people who you classify to be R2, readiness level 2, then you have a
Mm.
more participatory style of leadership, because here you can now start asking them for some of their opinions, some of their ideas, some of their inputs to make suggestions
Mhm.
and spend more
Okay.
time on relationship with them and middle in
Mm.
terms of tasks. Where you have people you think are readiness level 3, then you have a
Mm.
should adopt a more coaching style of leadership,
Mm.
not directive. You don't micromanage, you don't tell them very specifically what to do. You give them broad agenda, broad
Mm.
target, and give them room to do it, and then stay behind and coach them and support. If they need advice, back guide them,
Mm.
tell them, have you considered this, and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's not directive.
Mm.
Participatory is more directive. You still give them strong direction, but you listen to their input and ideas. For coaching, less direction and give them more empowerment to do things, right?
Right.
And then when you have people what we call R4, readiness level 4, then you can start delegating and
Yes.
developing the next generation of leaders, because a good leader will always what? Develop the leader who will take after him or her.
Mm. Mm.
So you now can start
Okay.
delegating. So this is the Hesse, I think this Hesse and Blanchard's situational
Situational
theory.
leadership.
Right, so that's the more one of the more modern theories of leadership if you are asking for.
Okay.
Right. So I think that some other ones, some leadership we can also classify. Another theory talks about autocratic leaders, paternalistic leaders, and democratic leaders. With
Uh-huh.
advantages and disadvantages. You can read up on yourself. But autocratic leaders, especially we see this used more in politics, or sometimes also in
Mm.
organizations. Autocratic leaders is good because you can take quick decisions. You take all the decisions yourself. You tell people what to do. You use the authority, right? But there's no two-way
Right.
communication, right?
Mm.
Paternalistic leaders, there's more two-way communication, but you feel you know what's best for the employees. You still take decisions, and decision making can be quite slow because you have to wait for you, at the top.
Mm.
And sometimes you still have to be dictatorial. Democratic, this is where you allow people vote and consult them very widely and give them more input and more roles. It's just like a spectrum of empowerment. Um,
Okay.
Strategic leadership, when we talk about strategic leadership, that's the name of the module. We believe that leaders occur at different levels across the organization. The ones at the
Mm.
top being more strategic because you have to deal with strategic issues of the organization, things like the company strategy, culture, structure, profit, and so on.
Yeah.
You have a big picture and long-term perspective. That's what we call
Yeah.
strategic leadership.
Right.
And you can see some
Right.
of the qualities there, inspiration, professional skills, and so on.
Good.
And then we won't really go into this, but this is good by Henry Mintzberg. He talks about the different qualities or different 10 skills of a manager. Yeah.
Mm.
So we say that good leaders sometimes also need to have managerial skills, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes your role involves both leadership and management. So you have to be a good symbolic figurehead. You have to have that leadership ability, liaison, be
Mm.
able to liaison and connect with people in different organizations and within your organization in different departments. And then in terms of informational roles, monitoring performance, disseminating information, those are things you need to know. Being a spokesperson for your organization, being able to grant your press interviews and speak on behalf of the organization with credibility. having communication ability. And then decision making, we think about your skills as an entrepreneur, and to start things from scratch and grow them, handle crisis and disturbance, budget and allocate resources correctly, and then negotiate during negotiations. You should be able to be a good negotiator to compromise, give and take, and so on. So
Person should have all qualities, then only become leader. Person should have all qualities, then become leader.
yes, that's so we've talked about contingency. We've talked about all of it. Yeah. So this was the ATHE's leadership thing. I think it's similar to ATHE thing and so on. That's all there. So you can see more stuff. If you look at some of the recommended readings, and I think on Moodle you have some of the stuff. So do you have any questions before we close?
Yeah, I think a very, very good session, and this I gained some knowledge, and I think I will study more on this one. If anything, I will come back to you.
All right. Thank you. That was nice having
Thank you.
chat with you.
Thank you. Bye.